This is the first day of Lent. Let's try Advent. It's close. Advent, Lent. That's I don't know where that came from. Well, it's the first day of Advent. And the meaning behind this is focused on the coming of the Messiah. And so in Unity, we don't think of the coming of the Messiah as a literal man coming either back or coming for the first time. And it's interesting because all through the ages, this whole messianic hope has been interpreted in so many ways. There are a lot of different ways to look at it. But I thought, why should we let this holiday pass or let this period pass without giving it some acknowledgement of from the basis of the ideas that we teach here? And so last year I decided to start this, and it occurred to me that when I talk about God, when I think of God, when I try to describe the nature of God, I always say there are four aspects of God. We think of God, we think of life. You know, all living things we see as expressions of God. We think of God as love. It's one of the aspects of God. God is love, according to 1 John. We think of God as power, the Almighty, omnipotent, one presence, one power. And we think of God as intelligence. And that intelligence is expressed in varying degrees through all of the manifestations, of which we are one, and we are considered the epitome of that expression, that we are the most capable of expressing the widest range of intelligence, and it doesn't mean that we are superior in any regard other than that our intelligence aperture is open wider than any other living thing. Everything knows how to live where it is. But we human beings have expressed the highest degree of intelligence. We've also expressed the exact opposite, highest degree, but that's the capability. But when you think of the nature of God, I talk about these four aspects: life, love, power, and intelligence. And so we'll get into that whole thing in this series, but we start today with life. And let me just explain what the wreath and the four candles that you see up front, I'm lighting one per Sunday. And first of all, the wreath represents God the Eternal, has no beginning, no end. So that surrounds all the candles. The next prominent feature is the white candle in the center. We call that the Christ, or we call it the soul, our center of power. And so we're just kind of setting up a framework from which we will think over these next 4 weeks. First candle today is green. And when you think of green, you think of life, you think of living things. You know, we tend to think of green. So we associate that color with with life. And when we think of life, the way that we express it as enthusiasm. When somebody's full of life, you know, they're full of enthusiasm. It's the way it expresses through us. The second one is love, which the color red or pink, either one will symbolize that. And love expresses as understanding. You think of a loving relationship that you're in, where there's no judgment necessarily, just understanding. And it means a lot more than that, and we'll talk about that next week. The next one is power, which is the blue candle. And we express the power of God as strength. And that strength could be physical, it could be character, it could be the strength of faith, strength in all of its many forms, power in all of its many forms. I talk about finding your center of power a lot. And when you find your center of power, when you touch your center of power, you find your strength. You have the strength to keep moving in whatever direction you need to be going. And the last one is intelligence, not last but not least, as we say, and it is symbolized by the yellow candle. And intelligence expresses as order. You've all seen the diagrams of the nautilus and all the different things in nature, the sunflower and the symmetry of nature. There's an order. There's an order in the seasons. There's an order in the way things unfold. And the expression of intelligence is always seen as a higher order. And again, all of these things we'll focus on as we go. But I would like to give this picture as a way to think about what we're talking about here. When we say God is light, or God is love, God is life, whatever, God is our source. Just think of it as not an outside thing like this illustration would depict, but as a concept, that we have one presence, one power, one source. And in this illustration, it's the white light, it's God. And it's everywhere present. It's all power, all intelligence, all law. It's everything. But it's an energy. It's, as Paul said, that we live and move and have our being in it. It's not a thing we look up to the sky. You know, I was trained to think that. You were trained to think that probably. Many people do. Many people question it. And that's one of the strengths of the argument of the atheists. You know, we've been up in space, didn't find any pearly gates, didn't find God. So that's just further proof that God does not exist. Well, our very existence is proof that God exists, that very life essence that animates all of us. In other words, we think of God as wherever I am, God is. You know, we say this in our closing prayer. And sometimes that doesn't really resonate with us. We don't understand that. But there are times when that hits us in ways that bring a great deal of comfort and strength and bring out all of our the things we need to deal with, whatever we need to deal with. You know, the story of Jacob thinking that he fled the presence of God, and he had this dream that there were angels right where he was, climbing up and down this ladder, connecting heaven to earth. And he woke up with that realization that God is here. You know, the kingdom of God is here, and I didn't know it. Because in his day, people believed God was localized. And I say in his day, in our day, people believe that also, that God is up there someplace. But this idea that, like, if you're going through something stressful and you're praying for help, if instead you let your prayer be an adjustment to that idea that God is with you now as a present help, and will melt away the depression, will melt away the fear, will give you a place to stand, to take a stand right where you are. You find that you have the strength that you need right now. But if you are affirming, I don't know what to do, I'm weak, I don't have any answers, you're ignoring the presence of God. So this presence, the white light of God, we're in it, we're immersed in it. It's expressing as our very being. And so you put the soul in the middle as the prism. And you think about that, this universal light is shining through us. And then it expresses as a color spectrum. And we're saying that color spectrum is not all these different colors, but it is life, love, power, and intelligence expressing uniquely in our lives, in our experience. So you're in a problem thing in your life, you're having this problem, you're saying, I don't know what to do. Well, if you think of this, the white light of God is all the intelligence that could possibly be. So you, the soul, the prism, saying, I don't know what to do, that's probably true. You're not saying anything that's not true. But you're not saying the whole truth. You shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free. You should remember, you need to remember at this place that I don't know what to do, but the intelligence in me, my source, God, does. And so we open the door to intelligence. I don't have to know what to do, but something in me does. And all I have to do is say, I'm going to open the door. And that's what affirmation is all about. Denial is saying, okay, I don't know what to do, but I let that go. That's releasing denial. I release that whole thought that I don't know what to do, that there's no answer here, I don't know. I let that go, and I open myself to, I am totally immersed in the absolute intelligence of God. And how intelligent is the intelligence of God? It is running this universe. It's doing all the stuff in your body that you have not a clue needs to be done. It's doing everything that needs to be done. So is your little problem then, if you put it in that perspective, is it any harder for this infinite intelligence? You go mow your grass, cut a blade of grass. Do you know how to fix that? Do you know how to make the grass keep growing? We would like to know how to make it stop growing, actually, for the most part. But we don't know that, how to do that. So that intelligence is even involved in something as simple as a blade of grass. Jesus says you can rake that up and throw it in the fire. It's very unimportant, but the whole of intelligence is invested in something that simple. The birds of the air, the lilies of the field, they're also fully invested with this intelligence. And here I am sitting, feeling sorry for myself, saying I don't have the intelligence, access to the intelligence that'll help me solve this problem. Well, you do. So you let go of that whole thought and you acknowledge that you are in the presence of God, and the answer is now coming forth in a way that you understand. And so you express that in your life. And it could be that, the answer department looks a little dim. It's because there's a smudge on the prism, there's a smudge on your thinking, on your consciousness. So you don't condemn yourself for that. You just say, that's where it is. That's where the problem is. So I open myself to the intelligence of God. We're going to go through a series of affirmations here pretty soon. But that's because that's how you do it, through speaking words and embracing the idea that you're saying. And that's important, to allow yourself to change from this fearful person to one expressing strength, courage. Okay, we talk about omnipotent or omnipresent life, and it's the environment that determines how it's expressed. So we'll have in this illustration, we have an oak tree. That was, we had oak trees in Missouri just like this. We had several in one of our yards, house we lived in, great big things, beautiful trees. But they lose all their leaves and they look like they're dead. But life is still there. And as the spring rolls around, as the environment begins to change, that allows the tree to start leafing out again. The life never left. That's the important thing. If you could wrap that tree up in a big bubble and provide the heat, necessary warmth, it would leaf out probably in the middle of winter if you gave it the right kind of environment. And the reason is life doesn't go away. It looks like it goes away, but it doesn't. That's an appearance. So you think of your life. Maybe your life looks like a barren tree at the moment, or a particular situation you're in looks rather hopeless, a leafless tree. And so you stare at that and you say, there's no life here. There's no My answer's not here, it's somewhere else. So you begin to change, you begin to say, God is omnipresent, everywhere present equally at the same time, so God is present here. And how many times have you prayed for the solution to some problem and the solution unfolded in a way that you didn't expect? You know, we're intelligent creatures, but we can't always see how it's going to work out. And that's not a sign of a lack of intelligence. Intelligence says, okay, I don't see the solution, but I know it's here. I know it's unfolding. That's intelligent. We don't give up. We don't stop. We don't throw the towel in. We say it's still working through me. It's working in and through me now. It is working in ways that I'm not even aware of. It works while I sleep. Have you ever stayed awake all night worrying because you thought if you stopped, the universe would stop turning or the problem would get worse if you stopped worrying about it? That's an interesting thing with us. The thing that makes us miserable is worry. But somehow we have this thing that if I stop worrying about it, something really bad's going to happen. Well, the bad's already probably happened. And I know how easy it is to get sucked into appearances. You know, that leafless tree looks pretty real. If you'd never been on this planet before, you showed up and, you know, dropped in the middle of winter and you saw all these trees without leaves, you think, what is this? Nothing pretty about this. But if you've been around a while, and all of us have, we've seen many seasons change. We've seen the leaves come out many times. We know it's going to happen. And we have a total faith. You know, all these the trees we have in the front, ash trees, I guess. They're beautiful trees. And then they turn and they're even more beautiful. And then suddenly a good wind comes and they're just skin and bones, nothing. So if that's all you saw, you'd say, that's not a very pretty tree. But I know they're coming back. I've seen them do it 16 times so far, 17 maybe. That's faith based on understanding, and understanding faith. It's not a blind faith. And we have understanding faith when we grasp that we are now in the presence of God, that is not, no matter what our life looks like, that has never gone away. It never will go away. That's understanding faith. Okay, it's a barren tree at this moment, but I know the leaves are going to come out. It's a barren situation at this moment, but I know the solution is coming about. And when you actually make that transition in yourself, you change. You change your whole day. Change that moment. Change the way you think of the thing. I'm working with my the whole idea of photography. It's just something I've revived in a slightly different way. But you know, when you buy a camera or your cell phone or whatever, all the whole thing is preset, and it's pretty cool. You know, you just push the button and it takes pretty amazing pictures. But if you want to get creative with a camera, if you set it in manual mode where you are making the choices as to how the picture will be exposed, that's what the professionals do. That's what makes an outstanding image, is when the creator, that is the photographer, takes control over how the exposure comes about. And that's what I like about this whole way of thinking. It's giving us the understanding that we are to take control of how our good unfolds, how our life unfolds. That we are opening this aperture and we're deciding how the controls of our thinking and our emotion, how they affect the light that comes into us, and how we can change the outcome to something that is more desirable. How we can get creative. In other words, you're in a situation that is difficult for you, and you're saying, you know, you're kind of reliving the past in that every situation like this is going to make me suffer. But what if you said, well, I can change the settings. I don't have to let this drag me down. I can change the settings, change the way I experience this. And you will produce an image that is totally different. And that starts with how you feel about yourself. But it's based on, a lot of people, because I've read many stories about when they switch to manual on their camera, they totally mess everything up. And they think, I can't do this, so they go back to automatic. Again, very understandable. But that reminds me of going to like a mainstream Christian church and they tell you how to think. Here's the settings. Here's the way you apply them. Here's how you think. Here's how you look at yourself. Here's how you look at life. Here's how you look at God. Here's how you look at the struggles humanity's going through at this moment. Here's how you look at everything. It's all laid out. It's all preset. And if you're into presets, that works. It's okay. But if you say, well, if God is all power, omnipresent, omnipotent, how could there be a second power called Satan? We start adjusting the controls, the way we think about things. Maybe it's not Satan that's doing all this evil stuff in the human family. Maybe it's just humans that are asleep. Maybe it's not a power outside of us. Maybe it's us. And maybe something can be done about it, at least in my life. So you may not want those kinds of controls. I think the majority of people don't, because they don't think they can run a manual camera. They don't think they can run their own spiritual life. They must be told how to think. They must be told what to do. You go to church, you're told, you're given a sermon, whatever, you go home, you've done your duty, and that's it. In this way of thought, when you go home, that's the beginning. Okay, what do I do with this thing? What do I do with this problem? How do I apply what I know to this situation? How do I make my spiritual understanding practical in a way that if I wake up depressed, I can change that. I can do something to change that. I don't have to think of depression as a second power. I can see it as a choice, or I can see it as something that is happening in me that I can remove. There's a block. There's something that's keeping that spectrum of light from fully shining through me. So I can release that. I can let that go. So that's the important thing here about life, is we are in life as an energy. Life is not a thing you do. We think, I'm living my life. Well, yeah, we do that. But think of life as the energy that you are, the very thing that's making you move, that's making you alive. You never are without that. It's always there. It's always present. You never can escape it. Everything that is in life, you're in it now. It's an attitude that we have. We never say there's no life here. From the point of view of spiritual expression, consciousness is the environment. We're talking about weather here. Temperature and all that determines how the tree unfolds. But in your life, it's your consciousness. That's the atmosphere. That's what the light of God is shining through, and that's what is affecting the way it expresses. And that's what we can change. And we begin to change it by simply acknowledging life is the only reality. One presence, one power. Whatever we're going through at this moment, just think about it. Everybody's going through something. Is there anybody here that's not going through something? Maybe you ought to be up here. We're all going through something. There's things in our life we would like to change. And there's things that we feel powerless to change. And that's a pretty good place to be, actually. It doesn't mean that we are without power to change, because we have power, access to the power of God always. But my ego is powerless to change. That allows me to say, I don't know what the answer is, but the answer's here. So I put myself out of the way. That's how I think of a power greater than myself, that I'm powerless to do anything about my life. Some people think that's a negative affirmation, but it's, when you think of it properly, it is very powerful. To say everything in my head, I can't come up with the answer. With all that I think I know, I can't come up with the answer here. So I take my head and I set it aside. I put it, what I think I know about everything, and I put it aside. This is what's powerless. But does that mean there is no power in me to make a change? It doesn't. I make way for that power to shine through. I clear off the smudge on the prism. And I don't do that by trying to force God into action through affirmation, through prayer, through anything else. But to acknowledge that greater life is now unfolding through me, and that's really all I have to do, to step aside, to let my ego get out of the way, to let my manufactured self get out of the way. It's the most powerful thing we can do, is to admit that we're powerless to make the change. We should say that with joy. I'm powerless, thank goodness, because I don't know what to do. But something in me does. Don't forget that part. Something in me does. And by acknowledging that, I'm letting that something in me come present whatever it is, through inspiration, through ideas. You may have a dream. I had a dream the other night that just, it was a message. It was one of these clear, vivid dreams that was very beautiful. And it was like I woke up feeling okay about whatever it was I was concerned about. It's like, it's okay. And that's so often how the answers come. It's just a simple knowing it's okay. I don't have to have the answer, but something in me does. So I would like to lead a series of affirmations here, and let me just preface this by saying an affirmation is not a set of words. It's what you allow to have happen when you say the words. It's a change of consciousness. And that's a very important thing. It's an action. It's a change of how you feel, a change of how you think. It's not words. Those things pasted on your refrigerator, on your mirror in your bathroom, wherever you put them. Those are calls to action, calls to change consciousness. So think of it that way, because they're very simple. This first one, and let me say them first, and then I'll invite you to join me. My soul radiates the pure, unrestricted energy of life. Together. My soul radiates the pure, unrestricted energy of life. Okay, how do you make that happen? The point is, you don't. You say it as if it is absolutely true. And when you say it, something in you changes. You feel more strength. You feel more power. You're saying, I think it was James Dillard Freeman used to say that we don't affirm something to make it true. We affirm it because it is true. A very important distinction. My soul radiates the pure, unrestricted energy of life. Let's say it again. My soul radiates the pure, unrestricted energy of life. And these are all on the back of your program in a paragraph form, so take it home and use this. There are no blockages, there are no restrictions. Together. There are no blockages, there are no restrictions. Okay, compare this statement with how you've been thinking about your issue. All kinds of blockages, all kinds of restrictions. That's why I feel so bad. So when I say there are no blockages, there are no restrictions, I am saying I'm putting this aside. All my perceptions, I put that aside. So can you do this? And the answer is yes, you can. And the moment you do it, you'll feel better. You'll change. There are no blockages. There are no restrictions. Let's say it again. There are no blockages. There are no restrictions. I am filled with a boundless life and unbridled enthusiasm. Together. I am filled with boundless life and unbridled enthusiasm. Now, don't try to make yourself enthusiastic, because it doesn't work. I've talked before about positive thinking people, that how they'll drive you nuts because they're trying to be positive. They're just trying so hard to be positive, it makes you want to throttle them. And that's not a real positive feeling. That's not what this is about. We don't force ourselves to be positive. The positive feelings that rise in us are the natural reaction to actually grasping what it is we're talking about. I'm filled with boundless life and unbridled enthusiasm. You know, this is absolutely true. And if you don't know it, it's because there's a smudge on your prism. And that's what we're removing by saying this. I am filled with boundless life and unbridled enthusiasm. Let's say it again. I am filled with boundless life and unbridled enthusiasm. Let it happen. Let go. Let this be true. The pure radiance of my soul shines in its fullness now. Together. The pure radiance of my soul shines in its fullness now. You know, that is absolutely true. You are made in the image and after the likeness of God. Do you think God made a dull soul in your case? Did God make some dull soul? How do you say dull souls and some bright ones? A lot of people think that. We're not all created equal in that regard. But you have this infinite ocean. You take 1,000 cups and you dip water out of it. Which one is more like the ocean? It's all the same. It's energy. And that's what's in us. That's what we are. That's how we think of this whole thing. The pure radiance of my soul shines in its fullness now. I'll say it again. The pure radiance of my soul shines in its fullness now. In perfect peace, I let this pure energy rise. Together. In perfect peace, I let this pure energy rise. What is this telling us to do? What are we agreeing to do when we say this? Nothing. It's not I, but the Father within that does the works. That's the shift of thought. In perfect peace, I let this pure energy rise. And when you let it rise, you feel the change. You feel better. You feel things are working. And the back of the program today explains, the process you could apply through a time of meditation to apply these statements. And I would highly recommend that you do that in this first week of Advent. Because the Savior, the Messiah we are expecting is us. It is our true, deeper self. It is the Christ in us, the awakened soul. That's the thing that will save us, because that's all the power, all the life, all the love, all the intelligence that we could possibly desire. It's in us as potential. That is our Savior, and it's coming forth now. Okay? Next week we'll move into the second week of Advent and talk about love and understanding. Thanks for coming out.
You've been watching a talk presented at the Unity Church of Grand Junction by Reverend Doug Bator. We would like to thank everyone who joined us here today in beautiful Grand Junction, Colorado, as well as those of you who are joining us online. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please like and subscribe to our channel. Also, please feel free to share this video with anyone you think might be interested or benefit from this message. If this video brought value to your life, please consider making a donation by clicking the link below to our PayPal donation account. Thanks again so much for watching.